Hey everybody. Today's lesson we're going to be covering two different skills. We're going to go back and visit using number bonds to represent fractions. I know for parents this is something you're not familiar with. However, the students are familiar with number bonds, and it's another way for them to connect and understand that the fraction is a piece of that whole. We're also going to be talking about building fractions that are greater than one whole. Now this will be a new skill. So we're going to be talking about things that are greater than one whole. If your parents are not listening right now, this is a good time for you to ask them to come over and listen, because there's something that parents don't understand, because we were taught fractions a lot differently than students are taught fractions now. And I know a lot of you have asked me about common denominators. In third grade, we do not turn fractions into common denominators when we're comparing. This is really hard for us to understand, because when I was in school, we only used common denominators. I still want to use common denominators, because unlike the students who are able to reason with the fractions, I have to go back to what I was taught, which is common denominators. However, the students are taught to reason with the different fractions, and they're able to solve without finding a common denominator. They will eventually have to find a common denominator, I believe, in 5th grade, maybe at the end of 4th, when they're multiplying and dividing fractions. However, at this time, it is not important to find a common denominator, and I know that's very hard for us to understand, because that's what we were taught, and that's what we want to do, and I still struggle with that when I'm doing things with fractions. I have to go back to what's best for the students, and it's best for the students to be able to reason with the fractions and not convert them to common denominators, parents. I know that the lesson that they're working on now is comparing fractions that have different denominators. If they're not ready for it, we're going to get to that in these lessons. They don't have to do that lesson yet. They can wait till they fully understand it through these lessons, okay? And we'll get back to the lesson. If you have any questions, you have my phone number, or if you're in Miss Diddlebeck or Miss Christopher's class, you can contact them however you contact them. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about fractions using number bonds, and we're also going to talk about building a fraction that's greater than 1. So let's go up here and let's look. Let's go back to that unit fraction. That unit fraction is what that shape is divided into. Now, if I look at these shapes, which they're not diamonds, they're supposed to be parallelograms turned over. Diamonds are not really a shape. These shapes, the unit fraction would be half, or 1/2. Not 1 out of 2, but 1/2. Because if I said 1 out of 2, that would mean that 1 out of 2 shapes were shaded in. Okay, what fraction of these shapes are shaded in? So first of all, what's the unit fraction? Half. So that's going to be my denominator. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces shaded in. So the fraction of this shape that is shaded in would be 5 halves. And I know that parents would probably want to convert this, but we're not converting at this time. 5 halves. So how would I exactly write 5 halves in a number bond? And usually I'm bonding number bond is like 1. But students, think about our fractions, our multiplication, when we might have had the number 15 in the number bond. And no, you can't even see that. Right over there. So we might have had the number 15 in the number bond, and we multiplied it 3 times, and that would be 5, 5, 5. So a number bond doesn't just include 1. Now, as we've used it in fractions now, it's included 1. But let's look now. How many parallelograms did we have? We had 3. That is my big number. Oh, that glare. 3 is my whole. There we go. 3 is my whole. Now, what fraction of that whole was shaded? 5 halves. So what fraction fraction was not shaded? This is not a pretty number bond. 1/2. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 halves plus 1/2 equals 3 whole. Let's look at our next shape here. It is a square, and it's divided into what unit fraction? Count the pieces. There are 8 pieces. It's divided into eighths. What fraction of those pieces are shaded? Now you shouldn't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If this shape's divided into eighths and every piece is shaded, that would be how many pieces? 8 pieces. So we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14, remember my unit fraction is eighths. 14 eighths are shaded. Now remember my number bond, what's the whole here? How many holes do I have? 2. So in my number bond, just a second. There we go, that's better. In my number bond, I have 2 whole squares. What fraction represents the shaded portion? That's right, 14 eighths. And what fraction represents the non-shaded portion? 2 eighths. And 2 eighths plus 14 eighths would be the same as 16 eighths, which would be the same as 1 whole. 16 eighths would equal 1 whole. No, that's not right. 16 eighths would equal 2 wholes. Because if I have 8 eighths, that's 1. And if I double 8, that's 16. So 16 eighths would be 2 wholes. Thinking back to that doubling and halving we talked about, it's going to come into play with fractions too. Let's look at these next 3 rectangles. What is the unit fraction here with these rectangles? 1/3. What fraction of the rectangles are shaded? Now this one might be a little bit of a trick. You can see here I didn't shade this whole one in because not all of it's shaded and not all of this one's shaded. So I have 3, 5, 7. So 7/3 are shaded. So my number bond, how many holes do I have? 3 holes. What fraction of that are shaded? 7 eighths. What fraction is not shaded? Oh wait, did I say 7 eighths? I'm confusing myself because I keep looking back and forth. That's 7/3. What fraction is not shaded? 2/3. And 7/3 plus 2/3 equals 9/3. Ooh, and 9/3 is the same as 3 whole. See how I bonded them together to get that answer. Let's look at this last one. I have some circles. It's kind of hard for y'all to see. Let me see here. This one's not very good shape then. What's the unit fraction? They're divided into fourths. What fraction of the pieces are shaded? What fraction of the circles are shaded? 22 fourths. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 21, 22. Now I'm going to go over here and do my number bond. What is the hole here? How many holes? 6 holes. How many are shaded? 22/4. How many are not shaded? 22 plus 2 is 24/4. And 24/4 would be the same as 6 whole. Now I know we went over a lot today in this lesson, so this might be a good lesson that you might want to make some of your own problems up and work them out. You could send them to me to check. You could make a table just like this and draw some different shapes and put unit fraction, fraction shaded, and then show me your number bond. Okay. If you have any questions, oh, nope, we've got a word problem today. So sorry, a word problem. Let me get to my word problem today. Almost forgot about it. Word problem today. So, for breakfast, Miss Sue spent 1/6 of her money on coffee and 1/6 of her money on a muffin. Now let's think about the information that we have here. For breakfast, Miss Sue spent 1/6 of her money on coffee and 1/6 of her money on a muffin. What could my question be? So stop the video at this time and think about the information you have. And what kind of question would you have about this? Now some of you might have had the question, how much money did Miss Sue have? Do I have enough information here to find out how much money she started with or how much money she ended with? No, I really can't give a monetary amount, like to say she started with $20 and she ended with $14. I really can't give a value there. So if that was your question that you came up with, stop the video now and think about a different question. There's possible 2 questions you could come up with. You could come up with what fraction of her money did she spend? Or you could have said, what fraction of her money did she have left over? Both of those questions could be answered with the information that we have provided. So for breakfast, Miss Sue spent 1/6 of her money on coffee and 1/6 of her money on a muffin. So what fraction of her money did she spend? And what was left? So I want you to stop the video now and get a piece of scratch paper. You can use some of the paper in your toolbox. And I want you to work this out. Thinking about fractions. So stop the video now and work this out. Okay, the first thing I always tell you to do is to draw a picture to help you. Here we don't know what the whole is. We just know the whole is Miss Sue's money. Okay. What would I divide this into to figure out how much she spent and how much she had left. Could I divide it into half? Is that going to help me? Half is really not going to help you here. It is a good landmark starting point, though, to divide this tape diagram into pieces. How many pieces should we have? 6 pieces. So if I have 2 halves, how many pieces need to be on this side? And how many pieces need to be on this side? Each side would need 3 pieces. So you see how this side has 1, 2, 3, and this side's going to have 3. So what did I partition my tape diagram into? I partitioned it into 6. So I'm going to label each of those. 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, which is the same as 1 whole. If the numerator and denominator are the same, it's going to be 1 whole. So Miss Sue spent 1/6 of her money on coffee. Oh, it looks nasty looking. It's supposed to be orange. And then she spent 1/6 of her money on a muffin. So let's answer the first question. What fraction of her money did she spend? So what fraction of her money did she spend? She spent 2/6. What fraction of her money was left? She had 4/6 left. Now if I bond together 2/6 and 4/6, I get 6/6. And what did I just say 6/6 was equal to? 6/6 is equal to 1 whole. So 2/6 was spent, 4/6 was left. I don't know how much money she had, but I know what fraction of her money she spent and what fraction she has left to spend. Remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call or send me a message on Seesaw.